The Jacksonville Jaguars have their home opener of the 2022 regular season upon them. This week, they host the Indianapolis Colts. Now, one of the things that's probably going to be the most highly talked about, highly touted, is the fact the Jaguars have beaten the Indianapolis Colts 8 straight times in the River City. The Colts have not won a game in Jacksonville since 2014. So I think that's an incredible fact. But an even crazier fact, in my opinion, is that this series is 9-0 for the home team in the last 9 games. So over 4 seasons worth of home games, the home team has won, regardless of venue. Now, for the streak to continue, it is imperative that not only Trevor Lawrence has an incredibly accurate day, and he has a good day with decision making, but this offensive line stops acting like Swiss cheese. They're going up against an equally competent and successful defensive line. You know, DeForest Buckner, Kwity Paye was a high draft pick, Yannick Ngakoue, everyone's familiar with him in Jacksonville. But back to Trevor Lawrence real quick. His accuracy was the leading cause for the Jaguars' downfall in DC last week. You can't have bad quarterback play and expect to be successful. You have to have good quarterback play, and you can't have a duplication of what we saw last week. Trevor Lawrence has to be a very accurate quarterback for the Jaguars to be successful, but like I said, it is also on this offensive line to keep him upright. You know, last week this Colts team got after Davis Mills a lot. He was sacked on 7.5% of his dropbacks. You think that's not a lot, but then you look at the fact that the Jaguars allowed 15 pressures last week. They're going to come after Trevor Lawrence as well. But I do think there's a huge sign that says this Jaguars offensive line needs to keep him upright, because Trevor was surgical in the pocket whenever he was clean. He was 75% completion on his passes, and then he also had the touchdown to James Robinson. But when he was pressured, that number plummeted into the ground, and he was 33%, and he had an abysmal 4.2 yards per attempt. So you're looking at this offensive line. Not only can they get better from their play on the field, they also need to get better with the penalties. You know, they had 2 false start penalties in this game. Then the rookie Luke Fortner had the hold. Cam Robinson had a false start earlier in the game. Then Walker Little came in for Juwan Taylor, who left the game for cramping. He also had a false start. So you're looking at those 3 plays right there. And those plays can be drive killers. Your Jaguar fans are well aware that you can't be successful when you shoot yourself in the foot. How many times have we thought we had a chance to win a game during the 1-15 season, during the 3-14 season, during all of these bad seasons we've had where we felt like we had a chance to win, we felt like we had a competitive team, but next thing you know, the team has 13 total penalties and the wheels just fall off faster than they can even find them to put them on in the first place. Now, while this Jaguars offensive line did struggle as a whole in pass protection, like I said, allowing the 15 pressures, getting Trevor Lawrence sacked a couple of times, the unit had an incredible day running the ball against the Commanders. You know, they have a very, very good defensive line and a front 7 as a whole, and they still were able to average 6.8 yards a carry on the day. Now, do I think the Jaguars stable of running backs that they have will be able to replicate their successes from last week? 1,000 million times whatever percent. Yes, this Jaguars offensive line is very good against running the ball. That was one of the strengths of Luke Fortner last year. Kentucky in 2021 was a very good running team. Both tackles are very good run blocking tackles. Then obviously you have the man beast in Brandon Sheriff, and then Ben Barch. But 4 of the 5 are very good run blocking offensive linemen, so I think there is absolutely a clear path for the Jaguars to have the same amount of success, despite their very limited usage in the Week 1 appearance. Now, one thing that I do want to point out here is that the Indianapolis Colts did hold the Houston Texans to a very bleak and disappointing and depressing 2.8 yards per carry. But the big thing here is that they had Rex Burkhead and Dameon Pierce. Yes, Dameon Pierce was a darling in the preseason, but he is not a former 1,000-yard running back like James Robinson is. And Rex Burkhead or Dameon Pierce also aren't their conference from college all-time leading rusher. The Jaguars have both of those things. James Robinson's 1,000 yards back, and then Travis Etienne is the ACC all-time leading rusher. So for me, it's an apples to oranges comparison, because you're talking about mediocre pedestrian running backs versus 2 running backs that could potentially be the running back 1 on a lot of teams in the National Football League, and they have 2 of them. Yannick Ngakoue was on the field for 21 of the Houston Texans rushing attempts. So you're talking about a guy that is not good at run stuffing, run defending, and that is Yannick Ngakoue. Jaguar fans are very, very familiar with that. He is terrible at stopping the run, and he's even worse at it when you run directly at him. So you're either going to have Cam Robinson or Juwan Taylor probably guarding Unique Ngakoue. As a whole, I think you just run the ball directly at Unique Ngakoue. You take the pressure off Trevor Lawrence. I don't think Trevor Lawrence should be throwing the ball 40 times. We talked about that last year. He doesn't need to be throwing the ball 40 times. Now you have two very good backs. You don't need to have Trevor Lawrence throwing the ball that many times. So I don't think the Jaguars are going to have any problem at all replicating what they did against the Commanders. I think they're going to at least have a similar day to what they had, because I don't think the Colts front seven is anything better than what the Commanders have. I probably would give the notch to the Commanders front seven, but not only were they able to make very good impactful plays in the running game, they were also able to be very, very effective pass catchers. And for the pass catchers as a whole, Christian Kirk saw a workload that I do think can maybe even be increased. He went, he had 6 catches on 12 targets, 110, 17 yards, something like that. He had a good day against the Washington Commanders, and I don't think this Colts secondary is anything better than what the Commanders have, and they were even down Cameron Curl last week. So you're talking about as a whole, this Jaguars passing attack. Zay Jones had 9 targets. He was able to get 4 first downs off of his 6 catches. The Jaguars were very effective in passing the ball. But once again, to bring it back to the quarterback, Trevor Lawrence has to be more accurate. He missed passes. He missed easy passes. He missed passes that we'd expect C.J. Beathard to make, that we'd yell at Jake Luton for not making. He missed open throws, and that can't happen. But I do think this Jaguars offense could use a little bit bigger dose of spreading the ball out. I talked about how Kirk could see a potential increase in his target load, but at the same time, you paid Evan Ingram to be a high-quality tight end, and when you give him 4 targets and he only has just a pedestrian amount of yards in week 1, I do think we're going to see a much heavier dose of Evan Ingram in this game. I would like to see a more heavy dose of him, get the tight ends involved, because that was one thing I was touting Doug Peterson and Press Taylor's offense about, is how much they want to use the tight ends and how much they did use tight ends in years prior. I want to see Evan Ingram more involved in the passing game. But if you're here, go ahead and do Patriotic Puzz a favor. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I would love it if you would. I would greatly appreciate it. I've got a lot of great stuff coming up for the home game in week 2. Now, to this run defense of the Jacksonville Jaguars, this task is not going to get any easier. I talked about last week how the Commanders have a very good offensive line, and then they have a former 1,000-yard running back in Antonio Gibson. Well, the offensive line might have gotten better. They're one of the best offensive lines. They have one of the best guards in the league, if not the best guard, in Quentin Nelson. But that offensive line also brings along their prize, and that is the 2021 NFL leading rusher in Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan Taylor lit the league on fire after Derrick Henry, unfortunately, went down with the injury. But this Colts offensive line is a top 10 offensive line according to SharpFootballAnalysis.com. And you're talking about this unit as a whole. There are no frills, there are no ruffles. It is a run the ball directly at you, and they're going to do it over and over and over again. Jonathan Taylor went for over 5 yards a carry on the 31 attempts he had last week, and he's going to find the holes this offensive line will create for him. I can't sugarcoat that, unfortunately. So it is really on Foley Fatukasi, Devon Hamilton, these big, beefy defensive linemen that the Jaguars are hoping take a big next step. Devon Hamilton takes the next step as the nose tackle. Fatukasi was brought in to help stop the run. And then Roy Robertson Harris is a very good defensive tackle for this team. And if you look at this unit as a whole, what group needs to have if you want to say the second best day behind Trevor Lawrence, it's the interior of the defense. You have your 3 defensive tackles that you need to have a very good day, and you have your 2 interior linebackers of Devin Lloyd and Oluwakin. They need to have a good day. They need to limit Jonathan Taylor, because the Jaguars will not win if they have a 5-yard per average on Jonathan Taylor on 31 target attempts. That cannot happen. But now for the pass rushers, I think this is going to probably be a very similar day to what we saw last week against the Commanders. This Colts offensive unit is one that does not make mistakes. They don't make undisciplined mistakes. They had 1 false start penalty all game, and that was it for the boneheaded mistakes that this Colts offensive line made. With the success Trayvon Walker had with the pick and the sack, and then Josh Allen had the quarterback hit and the fumble. I do think that they're really going to be able to look at these guys and try to get after them. I do think they're going to try their best to get after Carson Wentz, but first you have to be able to stop the run, because that is what they're going to rely on. There's talks that Alec Pierce might not be able to play for this game, and that would be an incredible add for this Jaguars defense, but we'll talk about all of that here in a second. I think this will be another great test to see what these Jaguars have for the tandem of first-round pass rushers that they do have, see what they have. No, I'm not talking about you, Caleb Von Chason. I'm talking about the other two, the ones that have actually been productive in the National Football League. But with a ton of noise and hype surrounding the free agent signings of Arden Key after he had a monster preseason, tallying multiple sacks, he left a lot to be desired last Sunday, as he legitimately ghosted the box score. I talked about last season how Taven Bryan would ghost the box score. Arden Key ghosted it. He played a good amount of snaps last week. And the same can be said for rotational defensive lineman Dwan Smoot, who had a whopping 1 total that matched his penalty total. 1. That can't happen. You're going to need to have some performance come out of those two, because can Josh Allen and Trayvon Walker get the job done? Yes. Do we want them to be the only two that can get the job done? Absolutely not. They also need to have some semblance of an impact on this Jaguars defensive line, defensive front seven as a whole, and really get after Matt Ryan, make him uncomfortable. Now, here in the fan cave, obviously I'm not going to come around and I'm not going to say that I'm going to celebrate injuries to athletes, but the fact that the Jaguars gave up 4 passing touchdowns to a guy like Carson Wentz, I think it's a huge plus for this Jaguars secondary to potentially not have to worry about rookie Alec Pierce. Alec Pierce was somebody I was incredibly high on as somebody that has field stretching ability. And if they are out Alec Pierce in week 2, I think that's a big plus for this Jaguars secondary. But the thing that probably won't be, and it's going to be another big task for second-year man Tyson Campbell, is the Colts' #1 wide receiver and former 1,000-yard receiver Michael Pittman. He's going to garner a lot of the attention, hopefully, from Tyson Campbell, because, good Lord, I do not want to see Shaq Griffin. Obviously, the one video of Pat McAfee recently that's been floating around on Twitter of Terry McLaurin going, oh, these guys are playing a soft cover too. This guy's lazy. This guy's not even trying to cover me. And then they immediately cut to Terry McLaurin just running right past Shaq Griffin. Ultimately, Tyson Campbell had a few less than desirable plays on Sunday, the main one being the touchdown to Jahan Dotson, but I can't imagine a similar regression from him in week 2. Obviously, he looked incredible throughout the later part of 2021, and that was a big step down for him from that play. But I say that all to say he also had the interception. He did have an overall good game. But Shaq Griffin, like I said, is just a liability in coverage. He allowed 50% of Carson Wentz's interceptions, and he just seemed like he was deathly allergic to quality coverage at times. So if Pierce doesn't play, it'll be a really good thing for this Jaguars secondary. But Darius Williams was kind of in the same boat as Devin Lloyd for me. These two were kind of very similar, in my opinion. And the fact that they didn't really have an offseason, they really didn't have a training camp, they really didn't have a preseason. And it's their first true action back last week, missing open field tackles. And when the Colts spread the ball around as much as they did have 9 different players see a target and actually brought the ball in, you need to be able to make open field tackles, and that was one thing that they both struggled with in week 1. So if they're going to have a good day, they need to be able to make the open field tackles, especially when you have 9 different players seeing targets. Now, for the safeties, Andre Sisco and Rayshawn Jenkins both had, like, if I'm going to grade them, probably a D minus day up in DC. Obviously, Andre Sisco probably could have helped on the long Terry McLaurin touchdown, plays like that. But the benefit of Sisco is that he's a very good open field tackler. And if Jonathan Taylor does break loose, I have a good amount of confidence in Andre Sisco being able to bring him down if Jonathan Taylor does get loose, to hopefully minimize the big plays that he does have. I do think, at the end of the day, for my score prediction, that the streak will continue. The streak will continue against this division rival of the Indianapolis Colts, sending them to the bottom of the divisional rankings. They're scraping the crud that the Jaguars have been leaving down there for years. They're going to be hanging out down there in it. But I do think the Jaguars come away with a 28-20 win. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think the score of this game will be. I'm going to be there. I'm a season ticket holder, section 148. If you see me, holla at your boy. I'd love to interact with you guys, say what's up. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hopefully the Jaguars end up at 500 after this Sunday's matchup. Once again, thank you for watching. Stay safe and go Jaguars.
How about them Jags?
Come on, Joe! Ah! Thank you, baby! Thank you! You making blood come from my damn mouth!
Duval! Yeah!